Good evening. I'd like to call the regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for Monday, November 21st, 2022 to order. First item on the agenda, public forum. Anybody wishing to address the Board of Finance in public forum? Okay. Seeing none, item number 2, approve minutes of our regular meeting minutes of October 17th, 2022. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any revisions, edits? I think I might have had a couple, but I did not. I only had an item that I want to follow up with Mr. DeMeo when we get to the Standing Building Committee. That's it.
I had one at the bottom of.
Go ahead.
Towards the bottom of page 2. The paragraph that begins, Mr. Hoy said this is possible. The second line where it says them out at 60, so it was included, it should be either in the numbers or into the numbers.
Great.
And
Anything?
then a little further up on that page, in the paragraph that begins just before section 2, Mr. Ailes said the tennis court replacement will be reestablished using asphalt because of the organic matter. I think that's organic matter below the courts, that they can't use post-tension concrete.
Good, yeah, that's
right.
good. Yeah, good point. Actually, that's what I circled for my follow-up with Mr. DeMeo, so.
Perfect. And then I think that's all I had, although I may have had, on page 3, in the middle of the paragraph, Mr. Ailes noted that supplies and materials seems to be running higher, but mostly due to encumbrances. That's it.
Agreed. Okay, anything further? Okay, call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to item number 3, correspondence, Standing Building Committee minutes. Good evening, Chairman DeMeo.
Good evening, folks. It's been a while. My apologies.
Good to see you.
Thank you, Michael.
So I alluded just moments ago to page number 2 of the Standing Building Committee minutes of October 17th. And I will be perfectly honest, it had to do with the tennis court replacement. At the very end, it said he will send these questions to Mr. DeMeo. And I'll be darned, I did not do that. So I don't know if you have a chance to actually respond to this, but the tennis court replacement will be reestablished using asphalt because the organic matter, again, that's under, as a substrate that they can't use the post-tension concrete. I was questioning if there was a longevity issue with the asphalt not lasting as long. So that was one item. And then the door and lock project at Guilford High School. There was a question, or I think it was questioned if it was a code issue and what precipitated the need for it.
Okay. There's no question that post-tension concrete, a tennis court, or any type of a playing surface like that is I'll call it a generational project, a product that will last much longer than asphalt, especially in New England conditions. I think we're weighing the cost of removing the organic matter and importing structural gravel at a pretty significant cost. I don't think we've actually got a number on it, against a 10 to 15 year life expectancy of a tennis court, where you feel that replacing the court in 12 to 15 years at least twice still brings you the town good value when the money's spent. If you can follow that logic without that thinking. Okay, the prep work is going to be significant, where we think we can get a couple of tennis courts, asphalt surfaces coated for the price of what it would take to prep the base.
Okay. Makes sense.
Okay. The second question was related to
The door and locks at the high school.
Okay. So my understanding here is that this is related to a town-wide security program. We're doing security doors in other schools, and we know that Guilford High School obviously is a newer building, but some of the locks on the classrooms can be upgraded this time to a more secure operation. And so we're looking at that, the cost of doing that. It's got nothing to do with the fact that, in any way, shape, or form that the initial installation was substandard or the product was substandard. It's just we're, even a few years later, security improvements in hardware have made this something that's worth taking a look at.
Okay, makes sense. Agreed. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Before I ask any other questions, does anybody else have anything regarding the November 1st meeting minutes? I did notice that there's several projects that look like they're punch list or closeout ready, just about. So I'm assuming the committee's looking forward to closing those out soon.
Yeah, several HVAC projects that are getting that are in the punch list for commissioning stage, third-party commissioning stage. So they're all tracking nicely.
I'll throw one other item in there, if I could.
And
On Baldwin, item number 9 on November 1st, again. The architect that was involved in that had provided an estimated date for the response for, I guess, the information that was provided by BL companies, and you had indicated you would have liked that response date prior to the November Board of Finance meeting, so thanks for calling us out. Have you gotten a response, or have you gotten or received a date that they'll be responding?
we have received a response from the Council for Silver Petrocelli. As you may imagine, when we brought this to their attention, the normal course of action is they'll bring their insurance carrier on board.
Okay.
So we have a response from their council, from them through their council, very detailed response. We have a special standing building committee meeting scheduled for the 29th, I believe it is, next Tuesday. Is that the 29th?
Right, yes.
I think so. So we have a special standing building committee meeting where we're going to, BL will be there, town council will be there. We'll go into executive session to discuss the response. And our mission is to get BL Company and Silver Petrocelli into the same room, engineers, talk turkey, and work out their differences and come up with a solution that's going to solve the problem for the town.
Right.
That's our mission.
That's fine for an answer. I wasn't looking for too much detail. I was just asking to make sure the process was moving along. And there wasn't any delays in that, so we can get it underway and completed. So, anybody else have anything for Mr. DeMeo? Dave, do you have anything for us?
I think I'll advise you folks that we did have there was an item in the November 1st meeting minutes under bills or old business. There's been an issue at the upper turf field at the high school where the turf is actually torn, the carpet is torn, and the belief of the standing fields committee is that there's some forces and reactions going on between the turf and the under subgrade materials. They're not working together nicely. So the standing field committee came to us with a request to have some testing done to the tune of $14,900. And we pushed back at that evening, and went into a special meeting on the 8th of November to discuss it further. We had the engineer on board that was initially there to install during the installation and design of the turf field. And we ultimately have agreed to proceed with that testing. There was a much less expensive, about 1/3 cost testing avenue, but it wasn't going to produce the results that would be indisputable as to what the problem may be. So that test has been authorized. I don't have a date of it yet. They actually take pieces of the turf. Evidently, there's a bulk of the material that they cut it out of. They don't take it out of the field itself, and they run it through its testing and come back with testing against standards is what it's called. And dimensional, they're going to assess the dimensional stability of the carpet against normal standards for the industry. And once we have that information, then we'll be pursuing an avenue that obviously get this repaired and protect the town.
Okay, great.
That's what I think I reported.
All right, yeah, well, then we'll look forward to the results of that when they finally come.
Yes.
Okay. Anything further?
How old is that field now? It's not all that old, is it?
No, it's probably all told 2 or 3 years old, but it was actually rebuilt after the first installation. Again, some subbase issues had happened there, and it was totally redone. And so here we are again.
Matt?
Mr. Chairman, Dave, thanks for all the work you do for us all the time. Is there any concern about the use of the infill product that we had on that that was designed relative to the weight on it?
There is some discussion that I think we used the sand infill there, but the sand infill may actually, it is heavier than your normal crumb rubber infill, and it may be imparting different forces on the carpet. So that's the only information I have, and the only discussion that came up. But whether that's I can't tell you whether that's.
Yeah, well, I did ask you to answer that. The question is whether or not the design standards were appropriate for the infill we used, right?
That's I think we that's our assumption as a committee.
Yep.
That everyone knew that a sand infill was being chosen and a carpet would be chosen for that. But we're going to be testing all that.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Dave, if you don't mind going back for a second, because I missed this. Who was it who proposed the $14,900 study?
I believe the proposal came from the Standing Fields Committee.
Okay, so it wasn't the manufacturer, it wasn't the installer, it was...
No, actually, the manufacturer has been radio silent, and this is a bit of our frustration. We reached out to them for assistance, and they have never responded. The installer came back once and repaired the carpet, and essentially said, that's the last time I'm coming back. And he hasn't been able to get a hold of the manufacturer, nor has the town. So,
I guess what I'm getting at is, we're looking at spending money to answer questions for somebody else as well as us.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay.
This is why we went had a special meeting on the subject and brought the engineers in. It was the desire of the Standing Fields Committee that we approve the expenditure because they felt that they would be left not totally with all the information they would need if they did the less expensive test. So this is why we went down that road.
Do you happen to know if they consider the option of spending $15,000 on lawyers?
We might well be doing that as well.
Depends on what the results are.
There's 2 ways of getting answers.
Yeah. I think Attorney Donofrio is who we use on these projects. Has Jeff Donofrio been apprised of these moves, Dave?
I believe Cliff has reached out to Jeff. on this item.
Yeah.
I'll
And
confirm
actually,
that.
the question came up this morning at the Board of Selectmen meeting, and Charles Abbott asked very much the same question. If it turns out that there is a flaw in either the design or the implementation, that the expectation is we would have recompense at some point. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have the Cadillac of the test completed, so, I think, I mean, I would assume, that being that there was a seasoned design firm on the product and a good material selected, that the town will be able to recover, these testing fees, during the settlement.
Thank you.
Anything else? David, thank you very much for joining, and
You're welcome.
glad we had some conversation this time, and you were on and off, so. Thank you again.
Have a good evening, happy Thanksgiving. all.
You too, thank you.
Take care.
Correspondence, item number 2, Pension Committee minutes. We have the minutes and the investment report. Anything on either? Except for a pretty dismal investment report, like the rest of us.
The next one will look better.
I like that forecasting.
That's why you haven't opened those envelopes from your investment firm.
Yeah. Haven't looked. Yeah, I don't have anything. All right, and anything on OPEB?
Even less.
I did have one item. It was under old business of the minutes, and it's more of, I think, maybe more of a clarification. Talked about anticipating that an unaudited year-end fiscal year will return a hefty surplus. That was really talking about the medical. Was it not? Because that's usually where we have historically
No,
taken
I
any.
think I was referencing the audit and the surplus on the operating budget,
On the-
fiscal
okay.
year 21, 22.
Yeah. In previous years, we have allocated additional funds to OPEB, and that's going to be under consideration this year.
Right, I don't think we had forecasted significant increases because of the volatility in the healthcare fund last year. In
Right.
fact, I think we had probably our lowest surplus in a number of years, and if I'm not correct.
Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought we had we had actually utilized some of the surplus in medical for OPEB.
Correct. In prior years,
In
yes.
prior years, right. Yeah, I'm not saying we did it last year, just that's where it had come from before.
Not to say we wouldn't again if it was warranted, but at this
Right.
point, we're not looking for it.
Well,
If you want to
if you go a little farther down your agenda, you're going to see that we're
Oh.
currently forecasting $945,000 surplus
Yeah.
in medical account, but
Right,
it's
right.
early.
Right, it's too early at this
Right.
point.
Yeah, I'm just responding to the item that says it'll be under consideration this year as well. It's always under consideration if it's doing well.
I agree.
Okay. All right, anything else under pension, OPEB, correspondence? Okay. Item number 4, review and accept report of expenditures for the Board of Education for October 2022. Linda Trudeau, Christy Faulkner. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Very good.
So, this was my first opportunity being the reviewer of the month. so-
Well, I'm glad you said that because I was going to mention that I can't believe it's your first time that you're actually doing this.
I know.
But so I already kind of gave her, told her that it's going to be rough going the first time. So.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
we're all gonna give you a hard time. Well, bear with me as I read my notes,
The
but-
floor is yours, Christy.
Thank you. So just jumping right in, expenditures for the month of October 2022 were $5,239,312.47. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of October were 30.59% of the budget as compared to 29.22% in the 2021-2022 year. Revenue for the month of October 2022 was $15,880, which included a $2,000 stipend for CERC training for 4 pupil service administrators. It's the State Education Resource Center of Connecticut. The remaining $13,880 was for the pre-K tuition program. You'll note that the tuition budget is running higher compared to the previous year, but that is due in part to an annual payment to CREC in the amount of $177,000 for some students. Also, under page 2 of the budget report, there's a line item under professional and technical services that appears over budget, but it will be reimbursed with a grant from Insight Education in the coming weeks. The items included on the warrant are standard payments, but we're happy to answer any questions about specific payments. Additionally, there is one you might note, that's the Guilford Lakes Playground. It was a $70,000 payment. I believe it's the final installment to the O'Brien and Sons Company. So the warrants we're submitting are a total of the payments for the month listed alphabetically. The total of the payments listed on the warrant is $2,597,392.18. I did want to additionally note that we held our first public input for the 2023-2024 budget, and we heard from 3 different sets of people. We heard from the hockey team, we heard from the girls swim and dive team, and we also heard from a parent who just was expressing her hope that we continue to support the arts. That's it.
That was going to be under old business, so thank you. So now I don't have to go over that.
No
So
problem.
I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a really good point, that first public hearing was held, I think, on the, I think it was the 19th. I think it was the 19th I had, yeah. So, yeah, I read I think we all did. We all read hockey, swim, arts. So, yeah, and, on behalf of the Board of Finance, I mean, it's great that people come out, to mention it. I wish we had more people here. But, anybody have any questions to start off for Board of Education? I know I was highlighting a number of items, and then I started going through the meeting minutes, and they were being answered, I guess, when Cliff was doing a report for operations, I think, last month. So, so I had water, security, I had a whole number of items, but then I started reading into the minutes, and I saw water is because of the irrigation, or I think it was irrigation. And then security was based on some cameras that were installed, so. I'm actually trying to find something here that wasn't answered in those. If you have anything you want to
while
lead
you're
us on.
looking, so I did send you out the tuition report earlier
Yes.
this afternoon.
Yes, got it.
So right now, we are projecting to be $258,913 under budget, which is great news, but it is very early in the year.
Yeah.
This could change. 1 or 2 outplacements could take that completely away. I am right now kind of figuring excess cost at 70%. While that is lower than last year, with the unknowns of what's going to happen with the formula for and the funding for excess cost, I would rather play a little bit more conservative and stay with about 70%. So right now, that's our projection. Numbers seem to be holding fairly well. Excuse me. So we'll continue to watch this and see how it goes through
The
the
student
year.
number on the private versus public is a little bit, it's 5 over on the private and almost 4 under on the public. So, but again, the numbers really don't matter too much when one of those students have specific needs. So, but that's good to hear that it's trending that way for right now.
And there are 1 or 2 that are going to age out during the year because of the requirement that we service them till their 22nd birthday. So there are a couple that are will be hitting their 22nd birthday. So the number will be changing throughout the year. And there is the potential for a couple more that are outplacements. So the parents have requested a change of placement. So This will change during the year, we know that much.
It's always a moving target.
Always the moving target, yes.
Speaking of 22, what's the lower limit? You start all the way through?
So
The age of the student.
The
age of students. So we start with students as young as age 3
Yeah, you do,
to up to age 22.
everybody. Thank you.
Our pre-K program has 3 and 4-year-olds.
And 22 is a recent change,
Yes,
correct?
yes.
It was 21.
It was added, it was raised up to 22 during COVID. It was only 21.
I'm guessing it's unlikely to be rolled back.
Probably not, but probably not.
22 is the new 21.
Site improvements, and I know that's trended very high, and I think I read about abatement
Yes.
that happened.
At
Is that
Baldwin.
largely the reason for the
There were some
larger
other,
than normal expenditure?
yeah, that
at
was
this
the
point?
biggest part of it.
Yeah.
You know, a couple other things that had some higher costs because of everything going up in price. But the good part of that was the Baldwin asbestos,
Mhm.
that we had originally tested it, but we didn't know that it had gone down another layer.
Do you know what, excuse me, do you know what that number was?
I don't remember what the exact dollar amount was for that. I can,
Yeah, I'm just curious what that hit was, and understanding that it was a needed and required expenditure, but, you know, when I was just looking at site improvements and the budgeted amount, and we're at 186%.
yeah, there are some other
Yeah.
things in there, so I can kind of go through and kind
Yeah.
of tell you what's driving that overage.
Yeah, I mean, the report Cliff gave was really good, but I didn't know how much more was causing that overage. And are we getting anything at all back somehow in any kind of grant money or anything that might offset that?
Nothing that I'm
Usually
aware
not,
of
but-
for that, but we are in the process of trying to apply for a couple HVAC grants for some of the HVAC projects that have been done. So those, I think there's 3 projects that
Is that through the
qualify.
state?
Yes.
The
that
state grant program?
qualify within the timeline for retroactive projects. So we are in the process of submitting those applications to see if we can get some money back on those projects. And those were bonded projects, so that would be nice to get some of those funds back.
Absolutely. Okay, anything on warrants? I think on page, I'm always, one of them I feel like I might need to be careful, but let's see. On page 5, right down, a few down the row there, there's one for $4,900. I think my question to that was that training that's indicated, was that for a number of people? Or was that training for a student? It looks like training.
That was staff training.
Was staff training, and
I don't remember how many people were involved in that training.
that doesn't matter. I just
But
was
it
wondering if it
is
was
staff.
multiple people that were being trained and not one or two.
No, I believe it was multiple people
Okay, all
trained.
right. Yeah, again, I look at that description, I want to be careful that I don't talk too much about that. But then 2 down below that, Demco, classroom kits and subscriptions. Just curious what that almost $15,000 was. What was the
They're-
subject matter on that, or?
Robot kits, robotics,
Oh, okay.
makerspace kind of
Okay.
project kits.
Oh, interesting, okay. Yeah, because the one above it was library supplies for $200, and then there was almost 15. It's like, oh,
Yeah, it was the robotics kits.
oh, okay, all right, fair enough.
Are those primarily at elementary or middle school, or is that district-wide?
I believe those were elementary. The elementary librarians submitted a GFFE grant for maker spaces, and so they were awarded $80,000. There was another smaller grant for GFFE for, might have been Baldwin. I'm going to get them confused now. For makers, a smaller makerspace project. But they do some robotics, other things through the high school and through other levels as well. But these were part of the elementary.
Great. It's good to see the move back towards collaborative work after what we've been for the
Yes.
last 2.5 years. So I'm imagining this is somewhat reflective of that. Right?
Yeah, it was really driven by one librarian who helped coordinate the 4 schools applying for this GFFE grant.
Great.
It's terrific.
Page 8, about the middle. Insight Education Group. Yeah. It was also mentioned during the summary that Chris just gave that there was some expenditures on, I think it was professional technical, that
Yes.
we were going to get a grant or reimburse Insight.
To reimburse
Is
for
this
the
same
66,000,
group?
yes.
And initiative mapping?
So, and I'm
just
probably
curious
not
what
going
that
to
is.
explain this as well
We have Dr.
as-
Balistraci here as backup, so, that helps.
So it's, and I'm probably not going to explain this well at all. It has to do with the framework for, and somebody want to help me out on this one?
I
Have you-
can try, although I will be not explaining it firsthand either. No. Should I come up?
There's
But,
another chair here, Katie, if you want to come up.
Initiative, it's mapping to really coordinate initiatives across the district, right? So it really allows for kind of planning and strategizing for initiatives so that they don't happen in silos, but can happen in a more integrated fashion. And we can get, obviously Dr. Freeman can provide a really much more detailed and thorough description of that.
I was just generally interested in what initiative mapping was. And
Right.
the expenditure and the fact that it's also going to be, there's going to be some, reimbursement on that, or there's a grant that's part of it, so.
Yeah, that is
So that's-
Trudeau's forte on that information. But again,
Yeah.
we're happy to get more information. I'm sharing with you what was explained
Okay.
to me briefly.
I believe, was this the administrative retreat that they had to kick off? Part of
I'm
the-
actually not
Yeah,
sure
I believe that
exactly.
it started the
I think it may have
work
been used
through
in multiple.
the retreat,
yeah.
and it's something that's ongoing, but they started it during the administrative retreat,
Mhm.
and they're building on it, and
It sounds like
This-
strategic planning.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that-
It
okay.
allows for an integrated approach to strategic planning
Mhm.
across,
Okay.
7 schools and also different departments within the school.
Along the same lines, on page 9, there's an item about halfway down, payable to learn for 6,200 for district thought exchange, and I'm just wondering if that somehow works with what we were just talking
so the
about.
Thought Exchange is the survey that they've been using that allows for somebody to put out their comment and then other people to tack on it, so it's not just a survey of here's my things, it's a survey that they've used on a couple different topics, and so this is the program that allows us to use this thought exchange.
I see.
And I believe, if I may, the most recent use of it was to gain Guilford Public School community input on what they would like to see in a new assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction and assessment.
Oh, right.
So it was a way to gather information from anyone in the school community who'd like to offer it as that search was ongoing.
If you don't mind my saying, I saw that, and I thought it was very well done, although I think I stumbled across it by accident. So I found it to be very useful. If you do it again, or if you keep this up, I'd encourage you to please somehow get the message out there. Now,
Try to
Yeah, I mean, there's
distribute it more widely. or
Yeah,
something.
please. I mean, there's always somebody, we're all engaged in something where people say, even at the town level, I didn't know about it, so I'm sure it's on me. But even though you push it as hard as you can, but I thought it was great.
The only other thing I had, it's more of, I'm just pointing it out, is that there was again, if you all had a chance to look on October 24th, there was a workshop, and that workshop was directed towards budget priorities for 23-24. So it was a very short read about some of the items that were coming up, about items that should be considered as, going into the budget season. So I won't read them all here, but I'm sure these will come back as recurring themes over the next few months. So it was interesting to hear what the principals, directors, and what Dr. Freeman had to say about that. No surprises there either.
It was a terrific discussion, and I will note that a couple of the administrators at the end of the meeting approached me and said, thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion. It really allowed us to get a sense not only of kind of specific budget areas that need focus, but really kind of where our teachers and administrators are at right now, kind of, I want to say at the tail end of the pandemic. Let's hope that's where we're at, right? But following a couple of years of really stressful experiences for teachers and staff, so it was a really terrific meeting, and we do it every year with the district leadership team. But this year it felt a little different, I have to say. It was really an in-depth conversation about kind of where we're at, which was nice.
Great.
I know last month we talked about the dining services, and there was a deadline coming up that needed to be acted upon as to whether or not the program was going to continue it. And
Right.
did the district make a decision, or do we still have some time to decide what we're going to do?
No, a decision has been made. We are ending the free meals at the end of November. The state had said that we had to end at the end of a month and could not continue it, and then they changed it slightly. The ending it on November 30th, starting paid meals back on December 1st, will leave us some funds still unspent. We'll be able to get those funds. There's still some discussion over what we're going to be allowed to use those for. Originally, we were told we could use them for equipment purchases. Now we're being told we can't. So there's still some discussion on what these unused funds can be. They're now saying it has to be used to pay for meals, which we're not sure how we're supposed to be doing that so we're waiting for more guidance, but right now we've made the decision to end at the end of November and go back to paid meals on December 1st.
Okay.
Thanks.
Anything?
Mr. Chairman, if I could for a moment?
Yes, sir.
At this morning's Board of Selectmen meeting, Cliff Gurnham brought to us a request for authorization for the superintendent to sign a request for grant funds for 4 HVAC projects that had been approved previously. I think you guys all approved the bonding fund for it, but recently the governor's office and the legislature announced that there was funding available for HVAC upgrades for the first time ever. They've never qualified for any kind of funding under the school reimbursement programs. And there are 4 projects. You've all approved them. I think it's all the elementary schools. And Cliff seems to think there's a pretty good possibility we might be able to qualify for some retroactive funding for those projects.
Great.
Great. I was going to say, I know several of them were already underway or nearly completed.
Exactly. So when the grant first came out, I said, oh, geez, we're a day late and $1 short, but apparently there's an opportunity for retroactive inclusion.
Consistent with the mystery that is HVAC.
Very true. Very true. Okay. Anything else before we let Christy and Linda? I think we're okay. We're good. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna wear my jacket.
At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept the report of expenditures of the Board of Education for October 2022 in the amount of $5,239,312.47.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, recusals. Excellent. Thank you. And on to item number 5. Review and approve report of expenditures for town government for October 2022. Mary Jane.
Okay, I'd like to start with revenues. Revenues are better than last year at this time. We are 56% received compared to 54.9 last year. Tax collections remain steady, and higher interest rates are keeping the finance revenue high. Golf revenue at 69% will translate to higher expenses on the other side. We've had a great golf season. The police department, although a small portion of the overall budget, is still low due to less road work being conducted for special duty. Park and Rec, although only at 29.2%, is trending almost 10% higher than last year. If you remember, we had a problem with Park and Rec last year because of use of this building. But overall, I have no concerns on the revenue at this time, and we'll take whatever questions you might have.
Finance continues to go at a very strong pace.
Well, it's about time.
She didn't want to gloat. Okay.
But that bar was set, just.
Pretty low.
Sorry.
Not liking this.
No, they're just limbo low. Okay.
Well, it's good news regardless.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, if nothing further on revenues, then we'll move on to expenses.
Okay, overall expenses are lower than last year. They're at 37.7% spent at 33% through the year. I got a bunch of items to review. The town clerk and the registrars are over the 33% due to expenses related to the election. Departments such as IT, insurance, communications, benefits, and planning and zoning are over the 33% due to the timing of contractual payments. Public Works would be at 33%, and Youth and Family Services would be under the 33% if we were to remove their encumbrances. The Historic District Commission, although a small portion, has been having additional meetings, and the recording secretary is already 50% spent on that side. EDC, we had an issue with the amount that we billed Madison last year for their portion of the EDC coordinator. So we had additional funds come in last year that have ended up in fund balance that I'll be requesting to transfer in this year to cover the difference. Golf, as I mentioned, is over, but due to the great weather we had through October, and of course the revenue accounts for that as well. The health department is over at this point due to the timing of anticipated grant reimbursements. The health department has a number of additional grants that they've been receiving since COVID, and we're still receiving them, but there's quite a lag in when those revenues come in to offset that, so we'll be seeing that with health for a little while. Park and Rec would, without their purchase orders, would be at 36.7%. Vehicle maintenance is very high. At this point, there was one large expense for some repairs, but the bulk of that is really them getting their equipment ready for snow. I'd like to report on the fire department every month because that we've been following. So just so you know, the chief, the deputy chief, and myself are watching these items very closely, and like I said, we hope to keep you updated throughout the year. So the fire department currently has 2 people on long-term workers' comp, and what happens is we cover the difference between what their regular pay is and subtracting out what we get from workers' comp, so we have an expense there. And in addition, we have to bring in a replacement to cover those 2. Without purchase orders, however, the fire department would be at 34.9%, And we are, as I said, 33% through the year. Salaries alone are 34%, just 1% over where they should be. So we're really tracking that well and really paying attention.
Making progress there.
Yeah, and paying more attention to the reimbursements and making sure that they're done on a timely manner. Like I said, we're going to be watching that real closely this year.
And it sounds as though the chief and the assistant chief are on board with doing that. I mean,
We were last year too. I've said before, we collaborate with the fire department so well on many levels. This is just one of the ones. So we do communicate probably weekly on this, so that we're staying on top of it.
Terrific.
I like that we're retiring principal and paying less on interest.
Thank you.
Who could not?
Well, with that kind of report, I don't know. I don't have any questions. Anybody have any questions? Covered everything pretty much, so I'm good. Go right to warrants. Special fund to start. I did have something highlighted. Let me just see. Yeah, I think it's probably more of a clarification or reminder on near the top on the United Way. Shelter diversion?
Oh, yeah,
Is it a pass-through?
it's a pass-through
Okay.
for a grant.
Okay.
Mhm.
I thought I had seen that before, but I
Yeah.
couldn't remember, so. Okay, that was it. That's all I had for that, for warrants on special fund. Anything on the weeklies, regular warrants? And while people are looking at their warrants, we could just go right to medical. Although, not a lot to report in terms of the ISL.
No, so I just wanted to note that claims through October are 20% lower than our budget. Of course, we are early in the year, closely watching it. The idea of our HSA and the employees paying their deductible right now and then our expenses going up later in the year seems to be, where we are at the moment. It is, because of that, it is bringing our projected estimated fund balance up to almost 5.7 million, but I doubt very much that that's going to stay at that point. And you mentioned ISL. We do have 3 members currently over the 75,000 mark and 1 that has just recently hit the 150,000 mark for $16,000. Again, early in the year for that as well.
My recollection from when we were talking about the premiums last year it doesn't take too many of those claims for us to be reevaluated, so to speak, by the insurance companies.
Absolutely.
So.
I mean, we talk, 1, 2, 3 people, and it could quadruple in a month's time.
Right.
So.
Okay.
And the lower number of claims, I know sometimes at the start of the fiscal year, there's a question of Anthem catching up with the claims. That doesn't seem to be the case with regard to these.
That's not the case,
Okay.
correct.
How are the Slim Nation participants doing?
Good question.
Haven't heard too.
They're healthier.
They're slim.
Yeah,
Disappearing.
Slimmer.
I can tell you, I won't tell you who or what they are, but I know that meetings are still being held, and it's a topic of conversation every time there's a birthday party. Whether or not it's whether or not it's a load day when they're allowed to have cake or not. So it is definitely, if nothing else, there is much awareness about what people are eating and how they're staying healthy. We've only heard positive things about the program. So
Sounds like that awareness kind of spreads throughout.
it does. Yeah, we're all. I'm like, okay, I'm not bringing cookies in. I don't know, if Linda, if you have anything to add on the Board of Ed side, I don't.
I've heard from 2 people that are participating, who are sticking with it. They've seen results and then they're happy with it. Sometimes, those days when there's cake around or somebody brings in donuts or something, they've had their issues. But so far, they seem to be doing it. One person said she would look to do it again if, or to continue even beyond the 6 months.
Seems to be successful.
Great.
And healthy employees are, good for our insurance, and it helps everyone. So, but more importantly, the employee being
Right.
healthy.
Well, the camaraderie that it appears to have created is
Oh, yeah,
is
which,
good to see.
it's,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's great.
Okay. Anything else from Mary Jane? And you're not going anywhere? Not for a while?
Nope.
Before we move on, I'll entertain a motion to approve the report of expenditures of the town government for October 2022 in the amount of $2,390,263.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, abstentions, recusals? Okay. Item number 6, discuss and take possible action on a resolution to transfer unexpended funds between projects and to close out completed projects. So, on this one, I know you have a thorough explanation for all these, but we have a document here that lists what appears to be 7 projects.
Well, it's.
Although, as I'm looking at this.
I'll explain it.
You'll explain it
Yeah.
better. Because in reading, in creating the motion for this, it's either, I was kind of looking at how to craft that,
It's to approve the resolution.
and it's just to simply approve the resolution. Is it that easy?
It's that easy.
Oh, all right, boy, I did a lot of work in trying to craft that one. All right, well, good. Good, I'm glad
I don't mean to
spent that
interrupt,
15
but
minutes.
but
No,
I
please.
don't want it to
Simpler
be
the
out there
better.
that we have 7 projects, because there's now 7
Please,
projects.
go ahead.
We're actually looking to close out 4
Yeah.
projects. The first is emergency services upgrades and acquisitions from fiscal year 2011-2012. Education improvements at various schools from fiscal year 2012-2013. Improvements to town facilities from 2017-2018. And educational improvements at various schools 2013-14. What we have here is the top 4 are showing where they're over or under at the end of their life, and we're moving money to other projects, other like projects. So the first 4 projects will be closed out, so
And then
another
what-
chunk
and
off of the
whatever's
list
left there is going into
has
the
to go
3
into the other
below.
ones, yes.
Got it.
And these are all bond.
These are all bonded
Bonded
projects, yes.
right, that were approved at referendum in the years that
Correct,
you
in the
mentioned.
years that I have noted.
Exactly.
Yes.
And there's some slight pluses, minuses, but it all,
Ve-
at the end of
Very,
it.
very small
Very,
numbers.
very small, but,
Yeah, the total amount we're talking about is like $1,800.
yeah,
180289.
Yeah, which is pretty good.
but,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
I was recently in the company of our bond counsel, Matt Ritter, who said that he doesn't know of any other finance director in the state of Connecticut that has ever made adjustments for 59 cents on a bond authorization. So to the level of detail that Mary Jane has gone on this, I think she should be congratulated.
Absolutely.
And he was, actually, I think he teased Mary Jane as well, but nonetheless. No.
but if it doesn't balance to 0, it can't close out, right?
You just make the rest of our jobs easier, right?
So,
We're just very fortunate.
yeah.
We have no
If
positions.
it's Excel or QuickBooks or Munis, it's all the same.
Yeah, he did give me a hard time, but I think he likes to do that anyway.
So, do we have any other questions or concerns on this? Otherwise, I'm just gonna try to, yeah, I'm going to simplify this with all the other stuff I had going on. So I would like to entertain a motion to approve the resolution that has been presented to us by our finance director to transfer unexpended funds between, as I said, between projects and close out.
Between bond authorizations.
Between bond authorizations and close out, and I actually had the following appropriation bond authorizations, but as presented by the finance director. So it's just approving the resolution. Tracy, you got that? I know you do.
Copy paste from this morning.
Yeah, right. She's like, oh yeah, it'll say, I got this. Cut and paste. So that's an informal motion.
I'll second.
Okay. Yeah, second.
The only thing I'd add is just
Go ahead.
that we're closing them out because the projects are completed.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Excellent. Thank you very much. I should ask abstentions, but I think we are all said in favor, so we're good. And now we will move to item number 7. Consider and take possible action to amend the fund balance policy. So we have a lot of documentation here. And again, I've highlighted a lot, but ultimately we had a fund balance policy that was established in what year was that? Do you remember that? 2000?
It was after our fund balance had fallen below about 4%, 3 or 4%.
It was a couple years after I came on the board, so I'm thinking it was like 2010, maybe 11.
It was a dark era.
Are you saying because I joined the board? Or?
No.
No,
But actually,
Yeah, right.
if you really want to know this, if you really want to know the story, it was back in the days when I used to have the pleasure of working with Bob Hartman Sr.
Mm-hmm.
And in those days, we used to figure on about $1 million to $1.2 million a year in surplus from the previous budgets to offset any increases in the following year. And we had a downturn in the economy, might have been around 2008, 2009.
2009.
And we got caught with our proverbial pants down, right? Because now all of a sudden we weren't creating those surpluses, and we had a revenue hole that we couldn't overcome. We did it for 1 year, and that dropped our fund balance down to about 3%.
Yeah.
And there were everyone, both the Board of Finance, the Board of Selectmen, said, we can't let this happen anymore, and that's when we invoked a couple of policies.
Right, and that.
One of which was the minimum fund balance policy, which at the time, I think your dad used to argue for 4 to 7%. People were saying, 6 to 10, and your father said that's too much, and I agreed with him. I agreed, yeah, again. So, but nonetheless, we instituted a policy, but at the same time, we basically instituted a rule of thumb that we weren't going to use fund balance to balance operating budgets.
Right. And that is what we've done over the years. And so the first document is the current fund balance and then policy, then the edits that are in red. So it's very clear where the edits are in red. And again, I'm not going through and reading all of the red items in here, because we've all read them. The one thing I did notice, very, very small typo, I don't know if it was noticed, but at the very, very top in the town of Guilford,
It's the mythical 10.
it's a small but big typo on Guilford, so, at the very top. Just for,
yeah, that's
just
right.
for officiality purposes.
Oh, yeah, you know how many people look at this?
Just
Yeah.
draw a line under the
Yeah.
bottom of
Right,
the line, you'll be okay.
yeah. Everything else is fine. But ultimately, what I did read out of you looking at the red is that it's explained in better detail the fund balances, the definition of the fund balances now, as opposed to just saying fund balance policy. It's the 5 different categories of fund balance. It also indicates the 10 to 15% that's being proposed of the regular general fund operating revenues. And then a little bit more detail on and the reason why, and the measurements with Gatsby, so. And then there was the actual draft update, which cleans up the edits, and then the memo from our financial advisor, Bill Lindsay, from Unistat Services, indicating his support for increasing the target range and the reasons why. I just did a real quick summary of those 4 documents. Mary Jane, do you want to say anything? I mean, we've talked about this a bit, so we knew this was all coming because we talked about it last month.
So you're correct that my draft does do 3 things. Like you said, it does detail based on GASB regulations, all of the different types of fund balances that we use or we have the ability to use, not only what it's for, but how you can use it, when you can take it out, all of that. It also recommends an unassigned fund balance up to 10 to 15% in lieu of the 5 to 10 that we currently have now, and to maintain reserves, adequate reserves to support 2 months of operating expenses instead of 1. And when we look at the reserves, we're looking at the overall all fund balance, not just the unassigned fund balance. So those are the 3 main issues. I will say that this was drafted based on other fund balance policies around the country that I found that I really liked. I was pulling out some, and really based on not only GASB's rules, but GFOA's standard format that you'll see in almost every city and town in Connecticut. I think I had 10 or 12 different ones to look at. So, and then the only thing I did add under objectives was one of the reasons we do this is to secure and maintain our bond rating, which is the fund balance policy truly has a direct result to that.
I'm glad you brought that up about the examples, I guess, or the reasoning behind this. I was reading through the meeting minutes, and I know when we talked about the fund balance policy and revising it, a couple of us on the board had indicated, what are other communities doing? What are other municipalities? In my mind, looking at this memo, it's pretty clear from our, from our financial advisor, not just the state, but federal, but nationally, what the numbers are and what the averages are, which I think is a better read than, what is Madison or Branford or, other municipalities right next to us doing. So I just want to make sure that I, mention that to the board, because we had requested more information about like communities, but I think this is probably a better litmus test on where we should be or could be.
Right. We had a conversation at the Board of Selectmen meeting this morning also about the rating agencies. And the rating agencies request, upwards to 20 to 25% of fund balance set aside. We aren't recommending that. We have a very solid overall fund balance. We're able to put money away in other areas. We talk to the rating agencies every year. We explain that to them, and they have continued to keep our ratings up as high as they are. And so even though they may request higher, they're looking all over the country again at all different types of communities. And I felt that for Guilford, 10 to 15 was the right number.
Yeah, what's right in one community may not be right in another community. Right. So,
which you're talking about, what are other
right.
communities doing, and certainly there are in many of the policies. I saw everything down to 5% up to 25%.
Well,
but I just thought this was the right place for us.
And it did say in the memo that 2 months of expenditures would be 16.7%.
Correct.
We're looking at between 10 and 15, but
Well,
we've
again,
also grown it.
That's based on total fund balance.
Right. Total, not just unassigned.
Yeah,
Right.
It's committed and others.
Yeah, it'd be good to actually have that word in there. I've dealt with rating agencies quite often over the years, and I couldn't agree more. if they come up with a number like 25%, they're assuming sort of the worst. They're not giving, nor in the letter from our advisor does he mention the sort of mitigants that Guilford offers in our flexibility and our depth and our breadth and our ability to raise funds if we need be, and our other forms of fiscal soundness. So you always give the rating agencies a bit of a squint because they kind of assume the worst. But anyway, I just want to underline that, and I think you're taking the right tack myself.
Yeah, and on the subject of the rating agencies, during our discussions with them, they did mention other policies. I'm working on a debt policy, which it's almost done, and a long-term financing policy, which is a little bit more complicated. So you might not see that as quickly. We're going to put a lot of thought into that one. But the rating agencies, ask us each year if we have these, and this is the year I'm dedicated to get them done, so.
Great. Matt, did you?
I want to agree with Bob that clearly the rating agencies also always look at your capacity to raise taxes. And this is a community that has always had that capacity, so we don't need to be at that number. And notwithstanding the occasional blip like a COVID, where we delay tax payments for 3 months, we clearly had the ability to withstand that and pay for it out of our reserve accounts. And with 11.5, what is it? That's about 12% now, around 12% after we hopefully you guys approve some changes.
Right in the middle.
Yeah, $12 million or to $13 million. Anything beyond that, we're most likely going to bond anyway. What are we going to need 11 or 12 million for, other than a significant capital project that would most likely be a bonded project?
But during COVID, we were able
Right.
to sustain through it because of our fund balance. We did allow taxpayers to defer taxes for 3 months during the highest point of my debt payments. and we were able to maintain that because of what we had in our unassigned fund balance. So, that was what that's really for. And it was there when we needed it. And
Yeah,
hopefully
so-
we won't need it again like that.
No.
But, we were in a very good financial position because of where we stand.
It's a war chest. It's a foundation. The reason you bond is because there's something's come up that you can't pay for all at once, or don't
Or you'd
want
rather
to.
not,
You
yeah.
spread the cost out over the years, because otherwise you're paying interest. There's a cost associated with it, and it's smart to keep money on hand for. It's kind of like you tax or you save to spend. If you can plan far enough ahead, which is going to come up later in the conversation today, this evening. So. Anyway, thank you for the work. I was very interested in all this. I know everybody's, I don't know. It's a big jump from 1 month to 2 months. I myself would go for 45 days, which happens to work out to 12.5%. But that's for later discussion.
And again, like I mentioned at the selectmen's meeting, it's a policy, it's a guide. We don't stop. You don't say, whoops, we're going to stop what we're doing because we haven't met our 2 months or whatever. It's really a guide to manage, how we
Yeah,
do our finances.
like any policy, it allows for consistency.
Mhm.
So if you fluctuate within that range, it's not a horrible thing if you're at 10 or if you're at, the hard part of the
Right,
level.
and we've been
But at
over
least
10
you're in a
for
range,
we've been
so-
over 10 for a couple of years anyway.
Right.
We're
Which
at
is
we're at
great.
11.4 as of
But
last year.
let's
so-
build upon that
Yeah.
at this point if, we've been so fortunate to do that.
Right.
Okay. All right, so is there anything further in this?
Can I point out 2 other?
Sure.
tiny little
Amy, go
notes?
ahead, please.
The T in Guilford can go down a little
Yeah.
further. In the non-spendable section on page 1,
To be maintained.
right under that word, it's contractually required to be maintained intact. And
Where are
then-
you? I'm sorry.
Page
Down
1.
there.
Page 1.
Yep.
Contractual to be
And then the following sentence should either start with these or they, something other than the,
Or this.
this, something would include inventory.
Right after.
You gotta tell me, I don't think.
Right after
Oh,
it.
this, oh, I thought you were
Actually, I
trying
have
to
the
figure
problems
something else.
finding
This would.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right, what I was gonna say is there's no specific date on the draft, so I'm gonna entertain this motion in the following way, which should be perfectly fine.
Okay, if you, once, just say, once you approve it, that's the adoption date. So-
Yeah, well,
Yep.
that's what I was gonna entertain the motion to amend the Town of Guilford's fund balance policy as per the 2022 draft update presented to the Board of Finance on November 21st, 2022.
With the corrections.
With the corrections. Noted.
Plus, we're changing the
Just
town
wanted to
name.
make sure you were paying attention.
Yes.
Surprise,
That-
we're
that would be
changing the
helpful,
town
right?
name too.
Wait a minute. Heard him.
So moved.
Moved, second.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
We look at
opposed?
the nitty-gritty, we don't look at the big words.
Guilford.
We go right over those.
Yeah. Okay. And now that we have this, adopted
Now
or
that we have
amended
a new
fund balance
policy.
policy, let's go on to item number 8. Consider and take possible action to authorize transfers from undesignated fund balance as of June 30th, 2022. So we do have documentation on this as well, and I guess more for the viewing public. We have a 5-year capital budget fiscal year 24 that was a document that was, it appears to have been written by our town planner, Jamie Stein,
I can,
because it's up in the corner, and then there's a number of capital budget items that are under that. But I don't think they're all planning.
no,
Right.
that was just,
Was that a
Matt
remnant?
wanted you to see that. That's an explanation about the planning part. It
Yeah.
really has,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, right, right,
It's
right.
not,
Oh.
it's not our capital budget, even though that's what it says. It's just an explanation on the planning portion.
I
Okay, just wanted to
appreciate
clear,
that. That's a
yeah.
very good, yeah, very, it's part of what was, it's part of what was, is the 5-year capital budget, but it's explanations of what's
Correct.
coming before us.
Correct.
Right. So the explanations are there, and of course, it's like 4 or 5 pages long, so we won't read that. But then the finance memo that's dated November 18th is very clear of what the request is. Actually, I just think for the record purposes, just for the public, it's short enough that I could read this. And it's from Mary Jane and members of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. As of the end of fiscal year 21-22, there is an There is an unaudited estimated surplus of $2.6 million. In order to bring our unassigned fund balance up to an estimated 12.5%, we need to keep at least $1.3 million of the surplus in the unassigned fund balance. This leaves $1.3 million available for transfer to committed fund balances. Therefore, I respectfully request a transfer of $1,320,000 from unassigned fund balance into the following lines. And I think at this point, I'll just hit them real quick, and then
Okay, we can.
I guess Mary Jane, Matt, you'll probably explain them, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, so there's fund balances committed for safe streets of $200,000, planning for $445,000, facilities for $400,000, and sidewalks and pedestrian improvements for $275,000. And now we will be getting detail on those 4 items.
I'll take the first one, Safe Streets.
Okay.
As I think you're all aware, the Guilford Safe Streets Task Force presented a series of recommendations based on their couple of years of working and engagement with a consultant around pedestrian, cycling, and overall transportation safety in the community. There are a series of recommendations which range from putting traffic stops or stop signs on North Madison Road to slow traffic down around our public school at Guilford Lakes. There's a potential for reconstruction of New England Road and Long Hill, which is a very dangerous intersection if anybody's ever tried to get up to the high school. There are things as simple as putting these buckets with flags on each side of a pedestrian crossing The one that we're looking at trialing is at Baldwin Middle School, where you take a flag out of one bucket, you put it up in the air to make sure people know you're out there, you walk across and you put it on the other side, and vice versa for kids who are walking to and from school. So there's a variety of these techniques and programs, as well as creating 11-foot traffic lanes, which might require on some of the streets putting lines along the side of the roads. So there are a significant number of initiatives. This probably doesn't get anywhere near where the Safe Streets Task Force and their series of recommendations would like, but it's a start. But more importantly, what it is, it's a commitment to funding some of the things that have been identified as potential safety and pedestrian improvements.
Can I, clarification question, I guess?
Sure.
So you mentioned safe streets, and then you mentioned sidewalks and pedestrian improvements, and there's two separate.
Completely different, and that's where MJ will talk to you about.
And I was going to ask the
Right.
difference between
it's
those
all,
two.
It's all part of an envelope, but
I
our
can
town
make an
engineer.
assumption, but I'll let it come
Right,
out.
our town
Okay.
engineer has some very specific projects, particularly as they relate to Route 1 and a couple other things.
I would think the safe streets are more of traffic calming items. I mean, they all are, but I would think the improvements are more physical, like physical changes to roads, and the safe streets are more.
Safe Streets talking about speed humps and raised crosswalks. And,
not as intrusive
and sharrows,
yes. Okay.
and also narrowing of intersections. They ran a couple of demonstration projects.
That's where New England and
That
Long
was
Hill
one
was
of them.
identified.
That was one of
as-
them. The other one was around the green on Park Street and
Yep.
and Broad Street.
Right.
So there are a number of things. Now,
Okay.
we're probably, I don't know if everybody's familiar, and not that we're going to fix this problem, but there was a terrible accident on Route 146 recently, where a cyclist was hit, and we're not going to be able to fix that because that's a state road and bad behavior and bad driving. But that's all part and parcel of the idea of safe streets is how do we get the community aware of the fact that you can't be speeding and you can't be distracted, can't be doing distracted driving.
Just because it's on a state street doesn't mean that it can't happen on a town road.
Exactly.
In the same manner, unfortunately.
So,
Okay.
MJ, you get the rest of them.
I get the rest of them. So the rest of them are all clearly identified, and if you attended or listened to the presentations for the capital projects, these will all be familiar to you. So we'll start with planning, and all of these projects are identified in the document that is on board pack. So we identified 3 of the projects that were presented by our new town planner to put into a committed fund. The first is the Historic District Planning Study for $120,000. The Plan of Conservation and Development, which is a requirement for us to do. There's no way around that. That's $175,000. And the Town Center South revamp for $150,000. Totals the $445,000 that we're recommending. These are all projects that selectmen really felt needed to be done, some long overdue, updates to plans that are many years old. The planning department will be using consultants. They aren't a big group. We'll be doing these over time, and by putting the money into this committed fund instead of pigeonholing her into specific fiscal years, will allow them the flexibility to do the ones that they can and their schedule to get them all done. So those are the ones for planning.
If I could just
Yep.
add to that, I think a couple things. First, the comprehensive plan of development is a statutory, you
Correct.
mentioned it, but
Yes.
I think it bears repeating. It's a statutory requirement that we really can't, I mean,
And it's
many
due
towns
anyway.
defer them, and it has to be completed.
Right, and we're getting up to our 10 years. So.
Right, and the other planning aspects of it are, I think there's value in removing it from a fiscal year, because as
anybody who's been involved in these types of things knows they can take longer than one fiscal year, and to have to worry about whether or not you're going to have the funding from one year to the next because of the budget creates some issues that you don't want to impact the planning if you can avoid
It's not like
it.
buying a vehicle.
Right,
Where it's,
exactly.
you know.
Or HVAC.
Or HVAC.
Right.
I don't have HVAC in my plan.
So.
Thanks,
well-
Jeff, we couldn't have said it better ourselves, so. So the next item is facilities. It'll be going into our committed facilities fund. It is specifically directed towards the police department. The police department has in their capital plan a vehicle port, garage, and storage building, which is much needed. And in conjunction with their projects, some roof replacement and work to be done on the roof and different projects between all of that. So that's $400,000 between the two. Again, we have a lot of construction going on over there at our public safety facility. We don't quite have this pinpointed as exactly what we're going to be doing yet, but this will give them, again, that flexibility to work on that properly and come back to us to use the funds set aside for them instead of forcing it to be done in the next fiscal year.
The point to be made here is if it doesn't wind up being spent at the police department, it can be spent on any other facility that we have. And well, once again, and I probably don't need to remind you that in order for us to expend any of those funds, we're coming back to you to tell you what they're going to be used for.
Right, and I mentioned that at the selectmen's meeting this morning, all of these funds, they have to come to the Board of Selectmen to get approvals for bid awards, so we will always know where the funds are coming from. And I did mention to the selectmen, it is the selectmen in this board that would determine if the funds needed to be moved to something else. So we say, okay, this is no longer at the top of our need, but we need something else. You definitely have the right and the responsibility and authority to move that money around. So we commit it for that purpose because we want to make sure that the taxpayers know that we have a true reason for the funding. It's not just, money set aside in a drawer somewhere just in case we need it. It does have a true purpose, but that purpose could change, but we would have to come to this board. So that's that, and is there something?
No,
Okay.
no.
And the last one is sidewalks and pedestrian improvements. Two projects brought forward during our capital presentations by our town engineer. The first is the sidewalk expansion for Route 1. That's $150,000. And pedestrian improvements on Hubbard Road for $125,000, making the $275,000. Again, both items discussed at the Capitol.
Could you just, for the public, just describe or clarify? I mean,
Sure, because Janice is in here to help me out like she was this morning. So I'm
It doesn't- I mean,
I'm really not sure I can explain it as well as she can.
I'll take the Hubbard Road one.
Okay.
Hubbard Road is I think you were aware, we have extended sidewalks along 77 up to Hubbard Road.
Right.
We have a sidewalk over on the bridge that we just did over Sawmill. We also have another sidewalk that is on the north side of Hubbard Road, which was put in when we put that bridge in. There is a 100-unit development going in on Hubbard Road, a housing development going in on Hubbard Road. So the plan here is to connect the Long Hill, Route 77 and Hubbard Road where it ends in front of the Guilford Vet Hospital, extending across to the bridge, across the West River, and all along the northern side of Hubbard Road, which would then create walkability for the 100 new housing units that have been approved and will be built on Hubbard Road. So that doesn't quite get us the full loop because we haven't done Long Hill down to Route 1 yet, but expect at some point there will be probably some discussion about that as well. So that's one. And then there are various portions of Route 1 that we, on both the east and the west end of Route 1, that have a dearth of sidewalks, where people are walking alongside the road to either get to bus stops or to areas of commerce. And there are, particularly on the west side, there are now a couple of residential developments that are being built along that side, the Muse and a couple others. So the idea is to create more walkability along that, which increases pedestrian safety and access to the Connecticut transit bus routes.
How does it work for complications with the coordination with the state on Route 1?
The state's usually pretty good with us. Let's talk about the two projects. One just completed, the one that goes along
But they're
77.
pretty open about it.
We have to jump through hoops. There's no question about it,
Right.
because there are state approvals with it, and then there are certain considerations that they require. And we've also just recently gotten the state to approve the sidewalk extension on 146 west, east of the cemetery, all the way up to Route 1 at the top of the hill where the old water tower used to be.
The diner.
Yes, so that's been approved. That's a state road as well. There are some hoops you have to jump through, but the state is generally enthusiastic, particularly if we have our own funding, about allowing us to continue to build sidewalks along their corridors.
I guess I was asking a little bit more for just timing purposes.
Government works at a glacial pace.
Do you think this will get? Do we think for the public this will be done in, within the next 10 years?
Oh yes. Actually,
Maybe not 2, but 10.
That's my sarcasm.
Janice had it in her budget over the next 3 years.
3 years. I figured it takes some time to go through this. It's like we're approving this money. It's not going to happen overnight.
It is not.
So it's going to take a year or two to.
You're right. So for those who recall, the money we used to do the sidewalk from Adams Middle School up to Hubbard Road was part of a grant that certain Scanlon got for us, a federal grant that was originally targeted for Nut Plains when we were talking about Nut Plains pathway, right? We were successful in getting that money moved to the other project, I think in 2018, 2019, and it took us nearly 3 years to complete that. The extension on Boston Street on 146, that's a connectivity grant that the town received 5 years ago, and we have been working with the state to get that project approved virtually since that time. So.
Just
The answer is yes. And by the way, it doesn't have to get done while I'm sitting in this seat or you're sitting in that seat, as long as it gets done at some point and the community benefits.
Right.
For the Hubbard Road project, I know the contractor was disputing participating in putting in sidewalks because the town was not going to be connecting them.
Right.
If the town is now going to be connecting them, does that change?
Unfortunately, we can't condition all the approvals. We can't condition an 830G on sidewalks. We can condition approval, planning and zoning can condition approval of certain projects with sidewalk requirements. Unfortunately, with an 830G, which that was, and for those who don't know, that's the affordable housing statute that allows them to bypass most zoning rules except for health. So they can dispense with design, they can dispense with pretty much anything. So we are unsuccessful in getting them to do it on that side. They made the argument that we already had a sidewalk on the other side. We have a town facility on the other side, and so forth. So we were unsuccessful in getting them to think about putting it on their side. But there will be something there. I think there will be a crosswalk, obviously created between their property and the sidewalk on the north side.
Right, yeah, the issue was that the housing project is going to be on the south side of Hubbard Road, but the sidewalk is on the north side.
Well, the existing sidewalk across the bridge is on the north side. It's hard to argue that we...
Right, we can't change that.
Right.
So. More than you wanted to know, I'm sorry. No, I said more details than you guys wanted to really know.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly add about the sidewalk expansion on Route 1. Janice spoke a lot about the outlying ends that have not had as much attention paid to them. I think she was looking for that as part of, safe streets, so to speak, to extend them a little bit further down.
But I think, particularly on the west side of Route 1, you mentioned the increase in the amount of residential development that's underway, but there's also a fair amount of commercial development that's already there. And I can imagine with increased residences, being able to walk to a restaurant or a store or what have you becomes increasingly important. So it makes sense to try and target that to make it safer from that perspective.
Correct.
For the sake of boring you guys to tears, we had a very interesting interaction with Guilford, Texaco, when they were looking to expand their operation in the back. Well, planning and zoning said, well, as a condition of approval, we'd like you to consider sidewalks on your side of the road, right? Because that's a typical ask for us now on every project, is to extend sidewalks. There were some significant challenges relative to what the state was asking for, so we actually backed off on it, because they would have had to move a telephone pole, rearrange their entrance and exits. So while we're desirous of always getting a sidewalk wherever we can, even though they appear to be completely disconnected and are only small stretches, the idea eventually is to connect those pieces.
Bit by bit, you bring them closer together, yes.
Incrementalism is, I think it's known in governmental.
Yeah, I'd just like to make one more comment on overall on this, because for the Board of Ed's knowledge, so the question came up at the Board of Selectmen's office if there was any projects for the Board of Education that would be setting money aside. And we certainly would, but the projects that come to us are usually at a larger span than we can do, but certainly it would not preclude the Board of Ed for me to be setting money aside for that purpose as well. But their projects are just kind of large, they immediately jump over this and go right to bonding when they come to us. But certainly, if there was ever something, we would certainly consider that as well.
That's a good point. Any further questions regarding the transfers that are being requested?
I just want to note that this will be as of June 30, 22, effective for the past audit. So
Right, right.
just want to make that clear.
Right. So it's basically happening immediately.
Correct.
Yes.
It'll be represented in the audit.
Right.
If in the past, yeah. My draft audit's
the
coming
recent-
this week. I need this done today.
In the recent past. So what I was going to do is, just for clarity's sake, each of these will be a motion for all of them, and we'll just go right through them and take the vote. First one is I'll entertain a motion to transfer $200,000 from unassigned fund balance to a fund balance committed to safe streets as described by the finance director and first selectman.
So moved.
Amy got the second, okay. Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Entertaining a motion to transfer $445,000 from unassigned fund balance to a fund balance committed to planning as documented by Guilford's town planner and described by the finance director and first selectman.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. Motion to transfer, entertain a motion to transfer $400,000 from unassigned fund balance to a fund balance committed to facilities as described by the finance director and first selectman.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Final motion, to entertain motion to transfer $275,000 from unassigned fund balance to a fund balance committed to sidewalks and pedestrian improvements as described by the Finance Director and First Selectman.
So Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? And that takes care of item number 8. Thank you for,
Thank you.
are you though?
The first selectman has the next.
He's got
got
item 9?
Okay.
Oh,
He's signing it.
That's
okay.
his.
Thank you, Mary Jane,
Thank
for
you.
everything, really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Okay, item number 9, discussion of ARPA subrecipient agreement with the Guilford Foundation for a COVID nonprofit relief program and the Board of Selectmen authorization of ARPA funding for the program. First Selectman Hoey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we've all had discussions about how we were going to spend some of the American Rescue Plan funds, and you guys have been very generous in terms of supporting the initiatives that the Board of Selectmen has put before you. We have a total of about $6.5 million in American Rescue Plan funds. To date, I think we've committed 3.5 to 4, somewhere around there, largely in a variety of areas, and I don't need to repeat them. You've all sat through it. But one of the things that we have, I've been long looking to do, is to have some kind of sustainable impact for our nonprofits in our community. And the American Rescue Plan in and of itself sort of works against doing long-term kind of planning. I was very disappointed to learn early on that we couldn't just create an endowment for Women and Family Life Center, or for Sarah Inc., or for the Guilford Keeping Society. So it became evident to me that there may be some ways to work around some of that stuff. But most importantly, I wanted to set up a process, the Board of Selectmen wanted to set up a process that was devoid of politics. And the first thing that came to mind for me was the Guilford Foundation. The Guilford Foundation has a reputation that is unparalleled in this community for integrity and for the work they do, particularly and only in a nonprofit sector. That is their charge. That is the only thing they are allowed to distribute, raise money for, and distribute funds to. So it's taken a while, but we have worked out what's known as a subrecipient agreement with the Guilford Foundation, whereby the town is going to take a portion of the American Rescue Plan funds. And this morning, the Board of Selectmen determined that we're going to start with $500,000, which, for those of you who are familiar with the Guilford Foundation, they generally dole out about 225 to 250 at most over the course of a year. So this is a significant amount of money. They're thrilled. I think they're thrilled. Liza and the board are thrilled with the opportunity to participate. One of the beauties of working with the foundation is they have the mechanics in place to run something that would be a qualification event or an application and qualification event. They've built an online tool that they utilize, and earlier in COVID, they set out to raise $40,000 for COVID-related impacts. They wound up, I think, raising $120,000 and spending it in a community, utilizing the methodology. So I had become aware of a consultant who had done something in East Windsor about a year ago, a gentleman by the name of George Krivda, who was introduced to me by Jason Bauza, who is the first selectman in East Windsor. That's one of the beauties of working through CCM and costs. You wind up having conversations with people who tell you things that you can take advantage of. So it's taken us a while, but the way it's going to work is the Guilford Foundation is going to hire George Krivda to design the qualification for funding for nonprofits for this purpose. And we've loosely described it in 3 buckets. 1, organizations that have been impacted by COVID. 2, programs that can create some kind of sustainability over time. And then the third piece, which is yet to be defined, is how do we identify the most pressing and emerging needs facing our community today that some of these funds might be able to be used for? And the Guilford Foundation has a report that I think just hit the street recently that talks about mental health and a couple other things. And one of the other emerging needs that we've had some discussions about are around the lack of daycare in our access to daycare in our community. So I'm thrilled to report that the board, the Guilford Foundation board, has approved this subrecipient agreement, and they have approved a contract that they will enter into with this gentleman who is at this point, I think, I don't want to give the full details, but I think he's up to $20,000 or $25,000 to help them build the specific criteria for this program. The Guilford Foundation will receive a 5% of the overall award for administrative purposes, because they're going to need to potentially bring some resources on board. At this morning's Board of Selectmen meeting, Charlie Havard, I want to negotiate with him. He said, "Are you sure that's enough?" And Liza, as I said to him, "Can I negotiate?" Yeah. So, but
What happened to Charles?
he wants to make sure it's right, and that they don't have to come back. But we made the agreement that we would. This is an open agreement, and in the agreement we actually say if we need to adjust it, we can. So. And the board also this morning committed to, if that original allocation of 500 minus the consulting costs and minus the administrative costs isn't enough, we've still got more money that we can put into that program. So what I was hoping for tonight was you guys to endorse A, the program, and B, the allocation of $500,000 to the Guilford Foundation for the purposes that we've just talked about. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I do think that this entire board, it would be, is thrilled that that is the case.
Yeah.
Getting the Guilford Foundation involved and them having the resources, and then on top of it, being able to just have this partnership.
Yeah, and again, there's a modicum of protected self-interest in here. The Guilford Foundation takes the political aspect of the decision out of play.
Right.
All right? This is not the Board of Selectmen saying yes, no, yes, no, yes. All right? And the potential ramifications, because there will always be people who are suspect of our motivations. And I'm not sure that people would be suspect of the decisions and the motivations of the Guilford Foundation. So the natural question is, should we do something like this for businesses? And the answer is maybe. At this point, most businesses have survived COVID, all right, but doesn't mean they haven't been impacted by it. But my primary motivation here is to make sure that those organizations that sustain healthy living in our community are able to remain intact. So.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So I don't mean to jump too far ahead.
Right.
This leaves about how much more do we anticipate?
2.5 to
2.5
3
million, or
Or probably a little bit more. I mean,
Some of the things that you've already approved are not going to be spent. For
Right,
instance,
we've approved a lot of projects and a lot of
Right.
amount that,
I get asked this all the time, so I'd love to have the answer. So about how much over what period of time still might arrive?
we have all the money in hand. All
You
right,
just have to
we've been
spend it by
$6.5 million, and we have collectively we've authorized expenditures about $3.5 million, I think, at this point.
with the 500.
With the 500.
Yeah.
So
That was
we
about
still
half.
have the opportunity to do a lot of other things. We have to do it. We have to actually spend the money. We have to spend it by 2026. So.
and it has to be like
it is a clock.
allocated by 2025, right? You can
2024,
spend it
end of 2024
yeah.
allocated, spent by 2026. And this is the part that I talked about. The second criteria here is, and I've long been disappointed by the fact that we can't create endowments. All right, I
'Cause you
can't say,
can't-
here's
Because
$100,000.
you can't earn interest on federal money.
Well,
Right.
that's part of it, so.
They won't let
As
you
is
do
everything,
that.
and listen, I play an attorney on TV, so I
Yeah.
defer to the ones that really know what we're talking about,
Last
but.
year, we couldn't earn interest on town money, so.
Yeah,
It's-
but I've never seen a federal,
Well, we can actually earn on this because the anticipation is we can earn, because it's gonna sit in reserve account until 2026. But
but not a return like in
No.
perpetuity, yeah.
you're absolutely right.
Right.
So, the thought that I've had, and that we're working through with the attorneys right now is, I can give Guilford Youth and not Youth and Family, but Guilford Women and Family Life Center or the Keeping Society, I can say, why don't you apply for a grant that says you would like to cover your rent, your utilities, and your payroll for the next 3 years, all right?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll give you that money, all right? You can work your books any way you want. Your other revenue streams can then go into some kind of endowment.
Yeah.
So that's the way we're gonna try to craft
Yeah.
this so that we can have some sustainability to the money that we're giving to
Yeah.
these, to these entities.
Bottom line, I have to prove that we've spent the money and on what? A thing, you know, it has to be a clear, concise project.
And it has to be a one-time, it can't
Correct.
be, yeah, it has to be one-time,
So you have
one-time
to
money.
prove that the money, the $500,000 that's being doled out by the Guilford Foundation is also being, you know, you're not
Correct,
just.
I'm responsible to report every dollar of the
Right.
ARPA funds,
But your
regardless of who's
Regardless of
determining where the money is going.
Your proof is not, the Guilford, giving it to the Guilford Foundation is not
Is
enough.
not enough. A
We are the
$500,000 check to the foundation is not enough.
Right.
Yeah.
They have to-
That's why we have a sub-recipient
Right.
agreement, so that they're aware of the
Right.
reporting requirements that we have on their funds.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have somebody deciding what the criteria are
Correct.
for the money. so that
Correct,
you
and then
can
you
get
write
the-
a check to a nonprofit for a specific purpose, and that's
And then they
done.
have the reporting requirements, yeah.
I do think that having the foundation
Act as the sub-recipient is helpful because as they've demonstrated, certainly throughout the pandemic, but even before that I think there was when I was on the board a number of years ago, there was a heating oil crisis, and they quickly put together a fund, had it raised money for it, and distributed it to families in need to pay for heating. And so they were able to do that at a much faster pace. No knock on the municipal government.
Believe me, that's
but-
exactly it.
But they were able to do that very, very rapidly to address a need that, you can't identify particularly with heating, you can't identify it in November and then implement it in April. That's not when the need's most dire, so.
Thank you for that point. Actually, there is some guidance from CCM that talks about exactly that point, is to utilize organizations that have an existing footprint in a community. The best we can understand, and the consultant that the foundation's going to hire thinks we are the first community in the state that is actually working with a local foundation to do this kind of work. And it's, I'm thrilled that we have an organization like the Guilford Foundation in this community that we can trust to do this, so.
And to clarify on that heating oil, the Guilford Foundation can't give money to an individual.
Right.
So
Right.
they worked with Women and
Yeah,
Family
yeah.
Life Center, I
Right.
believe. So
Right.
they are, all their money is going to go to other nonprofits to then trickle
Dole
down.
out.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's-
Thanks for
yeah.
clearing that up.
Yeah, and they
That's-
did a great job with COVID. I mean, we
Right.
did obviously
They
the
partnered with
COVID
them.
relief fund, and it worked really well, and they were great to work with, so I think it's a really smart move.
So I thank you all for the patience that you've exhibited over the last couple of years with how we develop these kind of, these projects. Although American Rescue Plan funds are about a year and 3 or 4 months old. But together, we've distributed a significant amount, or utilized a significant amount. Some of it was for general governmental purposes, which we're entitled to do because we fall under the $10 million exemption as granted by the final rule on it. And you've approved it for some capital projects and some, park and rec projects and a variety of other things. So I appreciate your willingness to be patient and work through this process. But I think we got to a really good place, particularly as it relates to the nonprofits and hopefully creating some sustaining impact for them. And thank you for the consideration.
Congrats on the partnership. That's great.
It was pretty easy. Picked.
Well, what's nice is it also becomes a bit of a model. I mean, this could be a template other communities.
Yeah.
Existing model, right?
Full
Just the
full disclosure,
sub-recipient.
I've already passed it out. Full disclosure, I've already provided the copy of the subrecipient now that it was open to the public. I had 7 finance directors from other towns
That's great.
waiting to see it because I told them I had a draft, but they couldn't see it until it was approved. And
now it's
so
out there.
we're already, again, the top of the curve, so.
Great.
That's great.
Went out this morning after the selectmen's meeting.
Let's hope it helps other communities.
Yeah.
Oh, it's,
Well, I certainly got from them for the policies, so I'm sharing something that we had.
good. Thank you for that consideration.
Okay. Well, we will move on to item number.
Well, Mr. Chairman, would you do me the pleasure of just a motion to support the transfer of the $500,000?
And the $500,000 to do it.
You don't have to do it, but it would be nice to have the support of
I'll
the spot.
entertain a motion to support the actions of the Board of Selectmen and the Guilford Foundation to utilize $500,000 from ARPA funding to, as it says here,
Support
to
nonprofits.
provide nonprofit relief, COVID nonprofit relief. I'll just leave it at that. That's perfect, right? Well, it's not perfect. It's good enough. I'll entertain. You know what?
So moved.
I'll put that in the form of a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. I'm sure there's any further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you. Now we can go to item number 10. Now we're in the home stretch. Discuss and take possible action on the Board of Finance meeting calendar. So not too much of a surprise here. Except when it first came to me, there was something that I noticed, and it didn't really come up until last year, and that was a holiday in June that we typically did not really observe. And so what I did ask, and this is for obviously our consideration approval, the meeting schedule, that will have 3 of our meetings on different days than Monday, regular meetings. So Tuesday obviously is for the Martin Luther King holiday. That's January 17th. Thursday, February 16th, that's actually based on our budget in the charter. So we have to have that meeting on that day. I was encouraged to see it's not on February 14th, though. We've had a few of those Valentine's Day meetings, which have been phenomenally difficult to try to explain that one away. And then Tuesday, actually Monday, June 19th would be Juneteenth. And so I requested a shift to Tuesday, June 20th for our consideration. Other than that, I think all the rest of the dates are pretty straightforward. And these are our official. This is our official meeting schedule. There'll be another couple meetings I'll bring up under new business, which we're also familiar with. But do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. Item number 11, committee reports, building permits. Anything under building permits? And if not, we'll go to item number 12, which is old business. I actually had 2 items, but one of them, as I had already mentioned, was taken, which was great that the Board of Education and Christy brought it up about the Operations Committee Public Forum on October 19th. So that's already been discussed. I also just wanted to note for the public that and this was alluded to a couple times, but the capital budget presentations that were on November 15th last week. And before us, the initial 2-year request, I think most of us were on that as Board of Finance members. The initial 2-year request was, I believe I saw was just over $10 million, but obviously the board is, and that's for a 2-year request. But the Board of Selectmen will, of course, be reviewing that, reducing it, and further justifying all of those items over the next few months, so we'll be hearing more on that. But the capital budget presentations usually are the kickoff of the budget season, so to speak, so. Anything else under old business? Otherwise, item number 13, new business. So I also just mentioned about other meetings, and we have our typical joint budget meetings with the Board of Education. Usually it's before our regular meeting of December and in January. Just want to make sure that we are planning on those joint budget meetings with the Board of Education for, and I believe it's typically been 6:30 on the night of our regular meeting that we meet jointly. And then that's in December, and then in January, it's 6 o'clock. Because there'll be more to discuss in the January meeting, because then we'll have our budget books from the superintendent. So I just want to make sure we get that in our calendars across the board. And that was going to be it for new business until I was about to leave my house today. And I got my new assessment. And so I don't know how many of us received our assessments.
I had 4 phone calls.
Some of us in the audience have received them. There'll be lots and lots of discussion over the next few months about the assessments that came out. The one thing I wanted to make a point of, and I think this is going to be fairly prevalent, because when I saw my assessment, I can tell you that, and it's all public knowledge anyway. It's a 26% increase, and if all of ours are double digits, just keep in mind that when you have increases like this, an assessment across the board where there's increases raises the grand list. When the grand list goes up, the mill rate goes down. So all it is a balancing of the amount of property and how it's valued, and what the mill rate is to collect the taxes we need to. So just because you have an assessment that went up 25% does not mean that your taxes and the mill rate will cause you to have an increase of 25%. This I remember from 5-6 years ago, and I just remember, I hope I get the entire board's support in trying to explain this to everybody. But I remember going on TV trying to explain what happens when you have a valuation that's either lower or higher, and how it affects you in your taxes. I just wanted to bring it up because now we're starting to get assessments. There may be that initial panic, which I had, and then realized, oh, right. If everybody goes up, the mill rate is going to drop, and it's just going to smooth out. So your taxes don't necessarily go up unless the mill rate goes up and your assessment goes up. So anyway, and the chances are in this one, I think it's a pretty fair assessment, for lack of a better word, that the mill rate will it always corrects itself and always has a pretty large size drop. If the grand list, assuming that the 26% increase in my assessment is prevalent and the average, which it probably won't be. It's going to be maybe double digits, but the whole point of this is that it's a neutral. It should be a neutral outcome. So, Matt, did you want to?
Mr. Chairman, you may actually win at only 26%, because
that's what I'm starting to hear.
Because occasionally I have nothing to do between the hours of midnight and 3 in the morning. I have a spreadsheet that I have started in March of 21, where I, thanks to the Guilford Courier, with the real estate transactions, I have cataloged every real estate transaction since that point, and I have over 600 data points on that spreadsheet. And I track the sales price versus the appraised price on our assessor's appraisal. Anybody want to guess what the differential is?
I don't want to.
It's more than 26. It's 42.5. all right?
Gee, it was 37
And
last time
and-
you said that number.
It's literally 42, it's 42.5%. And now, if you use those numbers, you do some kind of inverse math and talk about that kind of drop in the mill rate, we're no longer going to have to worry about hitting the car tax threshold.
And that's all I care about.
Right.
But you're absolutely right. And I've sat in that chair a few times, and we had some flip charts that showed the differential and so forth. But the most important thing to understand is, because your assessment went up that much, does not mean that your taxes are gonna go up anywhere near that, or if that much. So it is something that we face every 5 years. Now, in some previous revals, we've had the reverse, where our grand list dropped.
Yeah.
And that necessitated an increase in the mill rate. But that didn't necessarily mean that anybody individually was going to be assured of having an increase in their taxes. Now, the other part of this is, it all comes into play when we craft a new budget, because the new assessment goes in at the same time that a new budget goes in. But if you assume for a moment that everything remains similar between one budget year and the next budget year in terms of spending and revenues, there would be there would be no change into the amount of taxes that were collected across the entire spectrum. But that never happens, because we traditionally find an increase and maybe a decrease in revenue, or an increase in revenue. So it's, and I'm looking forward to you putting those flip charts up.
Yeah, I still have them. I still have them.
You do have them.
Are we out? Okay.